Welcome to the Business Book Challenge, where we read business books and professional development books so you don't have to. My name is Maria Medina, and I'm your business and networking coach. This week, we're going to be going over the book Hype by Gabrielle Bluestone. In this book, the intersection between marketing, psychology, and technology is brought together to show you the impact that information online can have on you, the decisions you make, and how you ultimately see the world. And with everything that's going on right now, I think this book is prevalent. It applies into how a lot of the time we rely heavily on certain sources of information without necessarily going back and saying, where did this person get this information? Is this factual? Or if somebody provides us with something with the sense of urgency, we are quick to react and quick to respond without checking ourselves, without stepping back and thinking, what am I receiving? What am I feeling right now? And how should I act appropriately towards this interaction? When we're doing things in person, it's a little bit easier to watch what we do because we're often more aware of people around us and how they see us and how we're reacting. So we are more self aware of how we're reacting and what we're doing in certain situations where we're less likely to take action because people are watching us. But when you are online and you're receiving information, whether that is via an email, via a website, or social media, and we don't have anybody around us to make us feel self aware, we are more likely to act rashly and act emotionally rather than sitting back with the feelings that that interaction is making us feel and analyzing it further. On top of that, you might start seeing things go viral, or you might start seeing things appear more and more on your newsfeed, on your social media feed, which then speaks to the fact that if I'm seeing this from multiple sources, it must be true, it must be credible, or if I'm seeing this from multiple sources, it must be the thing to buy. So when we're looking at this book Hype, and when we're looking at the interactions that we are having with people online, with brands online, I urge you to stop and think about what you're consuming. And there will come a point where certain sources do become more reliable and you're able to trust what they're saying. However, everybody that is posting online, whether it is generated by them or they're resharing from other people, people are human. We are human. We make mistakes, and you can't rely on everybody fact checking what they're sharing. Although a lot of sources do, they fact check as much as they can to an extent, but you often will see people retract and say, this was incorrect. I didn't share this, so long as they have that integrity in what they're sharing and that's who you're following. So when you're choosing to listen to information that's coming to you from online, or when you're looking to follow a trend or interact with a brand due to the social reputation and the social proof that you're seeing online, I urge you to do your own research. We used to be so much better at doing our own research before the age of social media. There were instances where we double, triple checked brand reputation and we relied more on personal recommendations when it came to things than now, where we feel connected with certain influencers, certain people online, brands online, and we come to trust that what they say is fact, and we don't think for ourselves. We often fall prey to this FOMO mentality. And if we see a lot of people experiencing a brand, a service, or a good, or an interaction, we want to partake. We don't want to miss out. And brands are getting smarter. Brands are utilizing this and they're using that psychology to get us to purchase, to get us to interact, to get us to believe in things that may not necessarily be true. So this discussion that I'm going to have with my next speaker, it speaks to today's world because we need to really think about the information we're consuming. Is it balanced? Where is it coming from? What are the sources? Does additional research need to be made? And who are we trusting when it comes to that information? What brand reputation do they have? What checks do they have in place? Are they getting paid by the company to say what they're saying? The research that we used to do before the age of social media when it came to interacting with brands and making purchases seems to be getting less and less now, as a sense of urgency has come upon us to make decisions faster when we don't need to. We don't have to act on that sense of urgency. We can choose to be mindful, interact with the brands, the people, and the information that we are relating to, but also fact checking what that information is, where it's coming from, and making more informed decisions. This book is excellent at showing how brands and people can manipulate information in order to draw out certain reactions or actions from people consuming that information through scams like Fire Festival. What are brands out there doing to encourage a purchase or to make you interact with them? And what is the reason behind it? So when you're seeing something go viral, or when you see something that's controversial, I urge you to think, why was this posted? What is the intention? What would I like my reaction to this to be, rather than automatically reacting without that thought process? Is this brand person post trying to manipulate me in a certain way? Are they feeding me the correct information? Should I be listening to this information? I really enjoyed reading this book. I highly recommend that you read it and you look for those documentaries that speak on this type of hype and how people got roped into it so that you can learn. And I encourage you that next time you find yourself reacting to something online, don't just interact straight away, but think about the post itself. Think about why it was posted. Think about your reaction. Put that correlation together and think, do I need additional information in order to interact with this post? Do I have all the information that I need? What other information could I look for? What other sources of information could I look for in order to make a better informed decision? Now that we've gone through the book and discussed some of those relevant situations that have been in the media and now potentially in Netflix documentaries, I wanted to bring in the guest that introduced me to this book. And if you could please introduce yourself, James Erskine with Rocket. Go ahead.
Of course. Hello, I'm James Erskine. I've got the illustrious title of CEO of Rocket. Rocket are a marketing and a content business. We've been around for about 16 years. For the last 12 of those, we've focused on youth and families. In terms of our specialism, it's a target audience. We help brands and organisations wherever there's a young person involved in the purchase decision or in the decision-making process. So We're lucky. We don't sell sweets and lollipops. We tend to work for brands that offer something meaningful to their end audience. So we work for quite a lot of universities and education brands. We work for a number of different book publishers, and we also work for attractions clients as well. And we do everything in terms of creative, above the line, social media, both organic and paid. And very relevant to this book, we do a lot of influencer marketing and have been doing influencer marketing since 2012. That makes us one of the first to actually execute that. So, yeah, lots of experience that's relevant to the book. And yeah, we're going through a successful time at the moment.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that it was relevant to you because it is. Those are the people that are most susceptible, the youth that are most susceptible to things that is going on online on social media and advertising, and they don't necessarily have all those resources. So stemming from that and how we know that a lot of news sources, they have this social responsibility to fact check, to what extent or what measures do you think social media platforms should be taking in order to reduce the spread of misinformation?
Well, it's a really tough question and a really, really pertinent one as we are recording. As we are recording, we are seeing Instagram just launch teen accounts across the English speaking world to protect teens, making their settings private when they register for a new account, letting teens' parents see who is messaging them, but not seeing the contents of the message. So you are seeing some social media platforms become a bit more accountable in terms of safety. In terms of scams, it's harder to regulate because actually it's kind of a get out clause. X, formerly Twitter, have always said in the past that they're not a broadcaster, they're not a channel, they are just a platform that allow other people to have a platform. And lots of the other social media sites have taken that view. Now, what's interesting is, and here's a great stat, Facebook in Germany employs disproportionately more people in Germany on the editorial side than anywhere else in the world. And the reason for that is that hate speech in Germany is a much bigger offence than anywhere else in the world, which to me sort of suggests that they can do it if they really want to, but they tend not to. They tend to take this decision that actually it's the people on the platform that should take responsibility. So that means it goes two ways. One, you have to rely on regulators. In the UK, you have the Advertising Standards Authority, the Competition and Markets Authority. In the States, you have similar. And it often comes down to the regulators to ensure that influencers, that the platforms are playing fairly and not promoting stuff. That's that they shouldn't be. That said, you still see things that slip through the net. What's quite fascinating about Hype, I love the book because it's part pop culture, part life lessons, and it also allows you to roll your eyes at the idiosyncrasies of influencer marketing and youth culture. But one of the things that they mentioned was influencers not disclosing their paid for promotions. And it's funny, I think with regulations, certainly in the UK market, and with the Advertising Standards Association and Authority coming down quite hard, you're seeing influencers being a lot better at disclosing. So that problem, in the 4 years since the book has been out, is starting to be addressed by the regulators, if not by the platforms themselves. The other thing that I would say is that the platforms are making it clearer now where influencers can tick a box and it automatically comes up as a paid partnership or paid promotion across TikTok, across Instagram. So they are taking steps. Now, disinformation and fake news, to use that horrible turn of phrase, but I think kind of labels have evolved, is a tougher one to regulate. And I think, as ever with anything in online culture, it's really sad, but it does come down to the end user to do more of the research. We should know that it's the Boston Herald, not the Boston Globe, or vice versa. We should know and do our own research on what is the source of the quote that we're seeing as end users. But lots of people don't have that level of online literacy. So it's still a work in progress.
Yeah, and I like that you mentioned that the platforms are now using those tools to help influencers share when they have a partner. It's a tick that they can, while they're uploading whatever it is that they're doing, is this a paid promotion? And they're disclosing it. As end users, besides doing the research like for misinformation, when it comes to creating hype and companies and brands using influencers, what can an end user look for in particular posts that tell them, hey, this is a paid promotion and this person isn't necessarily using the product? They might have been getting paid or they got it for free in order to promote it, and I need to do my own research.
So I think whenever you're working with influencers, the key word, and everybody says this, so it's almost lost its meaning, but authenticity. And what I mean by that is if you follow an influencer that is talking about Skittles on a Monday and M&Ms on a Wednesday, you know that one, they don't have a manager that's insisting on a category exclusivity agreement, but two, they're saying yes to every brand that approaches them. And I think that's the first red flag. The second is you can often see an influencer develop a relationship with a brand that they truly love. Some of the best campaigns we've worked on started off as where the influencer discovered the brand, and then, slowly but surely, the brand has come to them with the latest release. So they almost start with an organic relationship and then it's promoted later. So that's an example of a really good and effective promotion and partnership. It doesn't always work like that. And the one thing that I would say is if there's a depth of content, so multiple posts, if you're following a creator, an influencer across multiple platforms, it might be that on TikTok it seeps its way into some of their daily life. On Instagram, they can promote it. So you can sort of see that depth of relationship. From the marketing side, one thing that we always say to brands is, actually, what I tend to say in meetings is, don't have a one night stand, have a relationship. So don't just do an individual post because it does lack the authenticity. And from the creator side, and I just think it's up to the creator to ask lots of questions. If the creator doesn't show interest in the brand, doesn't want to experience it, then I think that probably shows that you're not on the right road to a very successful partnership. We've worked with Soap and Glory before, and what was brilliant was we immersed the influencers that we were working with in product, so they did genuinely have their favourite. We've worked before with books with publishers like HarperCollins and Penguin Random House, where if a creator hasn't genuinely loved the book, they've read a couple of chapters and metaphorically, not literally, given the book back and said, I don't feel able to post about this book. And that's fine. In fact, that's better than fine. That means you're getting to an authentic partnership. So, yeah, those are the things to look out for, I would say.
You were talking about that. That brought me into the thought of reputation from an influencer point of view, whereby if you are following them, and you're following them on multiple platforms, you see that the product is immersed, it is part of their life, you're more likely to believe them. And then eventually, as you're getting to know this influencer, the next time they recommend something, if they have that reputation where they have recommended things before that you know came to be true and were actually useful to you, you're less likely to do that research and you have that trust. And I talk about generating trust and generating value from brand perspective. So what can brands, not just influencers, but brands and labels do in order to create that trust within the consumer when they're advertising on social media?
So it's a really good point you raise. I mean, first of all, just to say, The book, the actual kind of tagline of the book is how scammers took over the internet. And I think one thing that social media has done is it has given rise to a certain amount of artifice and things not being true. There are two things in that. There was one, the influencer Callaway at the end, who went on a road show and was charging extortionate amounts. And you sort of see that in every walk of life. You get business consultants now whose only experience of business is having businesses go bust, and they set themselves up as a business coach. I think the most incredible thing about Artifice is actually in the first chapter of the book, where they have that private plane that doesn't go anywhere, but influencers can check into it, change their outfits, it's in an aircraft hangar, and make it look like they're traveling around the world on a private jet. So there is a certain amount of artifice out there. What can brands do? I think what brands can do is not patronize their audience. And I think the first thing to say from a brand perspective is know your brand purpose. Now, people get brand purpose confused with purpose driven marketing. If your brand purpose is it's the best global online school, then you don't have to do loads for the environment as well. But being the best online school is a good reason for being. And that is a good brand purpose. So don't overpromise. Don't then go on to say that every student has had the best time at the school, because people won't believe you. Don't say that this every book that you've read is the greatest book that you've ever read. It's simple things like that about controlling the messaging and being realistic and authentic. And yeah, an understanding of what you're offering the end target audience. So it kind of is refined to don't overpromise.
Because I actually recently attended a workshop where we said you, if anything, you want to under promise and over deliver rather than the other way around, because you don't want to disappoint. That is, again, reputation. You're building that trust with the consumer. What are you going to be able to do for them? And are you going to be able to deliver so that they do that? I like that you also bring up, because books are a big market on social media. They're sending them out to influencers to read and review, and there have been some scandals recently where influencers just grab whatever book, for the perks of it, and they review it and it's not genuine. And eventually they do get found out. People will catch on, is what you're saying. They'll figure it out one way or another.
Oh, completely. I think it's so obvious when people, you're right, with our publishing clients, we're really quite careful of that, because one question and it throws the influencer out of context. Similarly, with social media posts, you have to be really careful to monitor the community that you're fostering, because any backlash, any relevant question can cause ruptions in the appeal of that particular title. In education as well, all it takes is for one student to have not had a deliriously happy time as a student at that university, or at that higher education facility, and broadly your messaging has to be adjusted. So don't promise the earth. Exactly.
To that point, is as soon as somebody is dissatisfied, they're going to tell the world. But if somebody's happy, they're going to tell two people. But as soon as somebody's dissatisfied or they find you out, that's something that will get shared. And speaking onto that hype and going viral and creating that sense of FOMO, to what extent should companies be a little bit more cautious, especially, you're dealing with youth and advertising to youth. To what point is it ethical to create that FOMO that creates that wanting and them wanting to purchase that product or service?
Well, it's funny, isn't it? Because actually, that FOMO was mentioned throughout the book. It was mentioned in the what was his card called, Magnesis. That was their own kind of private members club, and they mentioned Soho House. One of the best. I no longer drink. I gave up drinking, but one of the best marketing that I was ever on the end of was a business called Naked Wines, and Naked Wines didn't accept me as a member immediately. I had signed up and they said, you're 25,000th in the queue. And that made me really want to be a customer. It really, really worked. So anything of literally manufacturing that FOMO is effective. How do you do that responsibly? Well, sometimes with our attraction clients, we've recently run a campaign for the London Museum. And they were looking at reaching young mums. They had a seaside experience that was a pleasure experience for very young children, for 2 to 5 year olds. And there, we obviously didn't want to say, you're a rubbish mum if you don't bring your kid. That isn't what we can say. But what we did talk about was the practical parenting benefits as well as it being a good day out. So we really positioned it as a wholesome, enriching experience as well as a way to kill an afternoon and during the summer holidays. So there, what we're doing is kind of fusing that informative education message, making our target audience feel like they are being superior parents, making them feel like they're making the responsible choice. And we do that with some of our books as well, when we're talking marketing books, and with education as well. One of our key benefits, we talk with educational content about attitudinal content and aspirational content. So, aspirational content focusing on the outcomes of the education. What are you making a better person? Attitudinal content, what kind of experience am I going to have when I go to this school, when I go to this university? So, yeah, just talking about all of the product benefits and informing the end audience of the decision that they're making.
And to that effect, we're talking about how it is ultimately up to the end user to do their research, be informed. So, I have spoken in this series previously about the importance of mindfulness and paying attention to what you're consuming. What can people do to try and educate themselves a little bit better, be more prepared for where something might come up that might be manipulative or misinformation? What can people do to stay away from these things?
Well, there's a really, really simple way of marketing to parents, and that's saying you're a rubbish parent unless you buy this product. And that's unfair because to bombard parents, as I remember when we were new parents, my beautiful wife said to me, all marketing is basically telling me that I'm a rubbish mum unless I do this, unless I do that. And there's kind of a joke, isn't there, with the eldest child, if they eat mud, you take them to casualty. The second child, if they eat mud, you say you can skip lunch. You know what I mean? You learn from those decisions and you learn what's needed and what really is an essential purchase. So, not bombarding the target audience with highfalutin messages. And then the other thing on mindfulness is, I think, generally giving people a break. So, I think the key thing is not to bombard audiences with messages. So we do quite a lot of radio and audio activity. And interestingly, in order to get the same cut through and deliver the same results, we've actually seen our radio campaigns need a lower opportunities to hear. So a lower frequency of campaign. Now, one, that since COVID, people are spending longer with audio and digital audio. And two, that's them not needing to be told everything 16 times before it cuts through. I think broadly, target audiences, particularly in the social media age, are more aware and are more likely to pull content towards them at the key times than they are have content pushed upon them. So one of the key things that we do, particularly with influencer marketing, is create content for every part of the funnel. So it's not just raising awareness at the top of the funnel, it's creating content that can be searched, what with social being the new search. So we're working that out as well. So yeah, not bombarding target audiences would be my summary.
Thank you so much, James, and thanks for all those insights. If anybody wants to carry on this conversation or reach out to you or Rocket, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Well, if you want to have a chat about work, then you can either find me on LinkedIn. I'm James Erskine, and you can find Rocket on LinkedIn. If you want to have a chat, kind of about work, kind of about social media, if you've just read Hype, find me on X, formerly Twitter. I'm at James Erskine, Erskine, and you can even have my email address, james.erskine@wearerocket.co.uk, and I'd love to carry on the conversation.
Amazing. Thank you again. And thanks everybody for watching. Don't forget to join us next week.